Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Hey, and we are live. Today is Monday, so welcome to the show. This is going out on Mintwave Radio, so you can just ask Alexa for Mintwave Radio Station or go to the website KarenRobertsCoaching.com/Mintwave-radio and listen in live and actually take a look at the schedule for the rest of the week. If this is via podcast, again, it's not just my podcast. If you go to the website /podcast-network, to see the Raising Vibrations networks, download the app for Android and Apple. Please subscribe to any that actually take your fancy and feel free to leave a comment. So today's episode is 139, and today we have Angela Turpin, who is a trauma healer, self-sabotage slayer, transformation coach. And we're going to be talking about healing trauma and self-sabotage. My name's Karen Roberts and I am your host. We are helping coaches and therapists get their message heard to the people who need to hear it. So thank you for taking your time out of your day today and spending it with us, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Now, Angela has spent the last several years healing from childhood trauma. Healing her trauma took her to the end of hell. She healed from sexual, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical abuse one step at a time. When she finally conquered her trauma, she started the movement and the mission to activate passionate and committed women to turn doubt, fears, and past stories into limitless power, unwavering self-trust, and magnetic energy. Angela uses her personal experiences, her spiritual gifts and techniques and certifications to create digital products, courses that deliver maximum lifetime results. So, wow. Where do we start, Angela?
I think that's a great question.
Where do we start? I mean, it does seem to be a common thread that quite often coaches and healers, it's because they've had to overcome something themselves, but it sounds like you've been through a lot. And so would you like to share a little part of your story, how you got to be what you're doing right now?
Sure. So I actually started, I think it's been about 10 years ago that I started this journey. And I kind of dived into personal development. And I was listening to, Tony Robbins on YouTube and listening to motivational videos. And I think I did that for about 2 years. And I was just really scratching the surface with changing my life and shifting and doing those things. And then it was one night I was hanging out with some friends and I had a flashback of what had happened to me when I was a child. And it totally freaked me out. But I was like, that doesn't affect me. There's no way that what happened to me when I was like 3 or 4 years old is affecting my life right now. Like there's no way. That's impossible. Then and I never did anything with it. I never went to therapy. I told my friend that I had that flashback and I was like, I'm fine. And then 2 years later, I was dating this guy and I was in a very familiar situation where I felt like I was being used as an object. I didn't want to have sex. This is not the direction I wanted to go, right? I wanted to wait. I wanted to develop something serious before we got intimate that way. And I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to say no. And he didn't pressure me. I'm not trying to paint him to be a bad guy or anything like that. I just really didn't speak up. And then that moment actually changed my life forever because I got pregnant that night. And then I had my daughter and realized that if I don't start doing something about my past, then it's going to affect my child. And not only is it going to affect my child, I'm not with her dad. And so now I have to develop some sort of trust between me and her dad that I have no idea how to create because of my history. And now I have a little girl, and now my biggest fear is that the cycles are going to repeat. So while I was pregnant, I was going to two therapists and a spiritual healer, and it was a wild ride. It was just a wild ride. So that's what started it all.
Wow. I mean, isn't it fascinating that we can totally block things out? I mean, so that memory hadn't come up until that time? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So I think I was 27 when that popped up. And so it would have been like 24 years before I had like really remembered. I did know that this is my mom's second husband. I did know that I was being physically abused by him. I remembered bits and pieces of that. So I knew that that was happening, but I didn't remember the sexual abuse part of it. And
Right.
so it like just came in. And then when I started healing even more, there would still be like flashbacks and memories and stuff that would get more vivid as I healed, that solidified that memory and what happened, and that I really did need to heal, and this really was what happened. Because I did have like residual impact things, like, I didn't like to hug people. I never let anybody know where I lived. You always had to call before you showed up at my house. Like, I was really protective of myself and my house and things like that. But I didn't understand until a very long time that a lot of it had to do with unhealed trauma.
Right. And so it's just amazing how the mind works, right?
Yeah.
You're suppressing it. So put that away in a little box, but it's going to come back and bite you on the butt, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it sure did. And I didn't expect that being pregnant was going to be the way that it was going to come back and bite me.
Wow. So, okay, so moving forward, so what made you decide, okay, so once you've healed, what gave you the desire to then go out there and start business for yourself, helping others?
Well, I had already, the reason why I had dived into personal development is because I decided that I was going to start a blog, and because I wanted to leave my job. So I had started a blog and I had no idea what I was doing. And it just kind of transformed from there. It turned into a whole business instead of it just being a blog and I was just writing. So it kind of took a mind of its own. And then while I was healing and pregnant, I blogged about my journey and what was happening and stuff like that, because I didn't know what I was going to do at that point in time with the business and with the blog. And so when I finally felt like I was mostly healed from my trauma, that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to give back to women. This is what I'm going to do. I feel like this is what I was called to do. I've struggled with this my whole life and didn't even realize that I was struggling with it. I was able to heal from trauma while I was pregnant. So there isn't any reason why I can't help women do this. And then it just kind of took a life of its own after that.
Right. And in what ways do you think that, or have you seen that it has affected your day-to-day life? I mean, you mentioned there that prior to that you were very safety conscious and not wanting to share where you lived and things. How has your day-to-day changed since you've healed?
Well, I'm very much in flow. I don't try to control anyone or people. I don't freak, no one really comes to my house unexpectedly, but I don't freak out when people want to drop by unexpectedly. I will hug people. I won't hug everybody. And that's just something, I've always been that way. And I just trust like how I feel more often, rather than thinking that I'm weird for not wanting to hug certain people. So I don't like, I just roll with it. I trust the way that I feel way more rather than questioning it, which I used to do all the time. Like, there's just something wrong with me. And my boundaries are so strong now, and it's not even really about being afraid to say no. It's about not wanting to feel a certain way if I don't speak up, because now it's so uncomfortable if I don't listen to myself. And I also am very picky about the men that I date now. I don't just go out with anybody, and I definitely don't put myself in situations where I could potentially feel uncomfortable. And I make sure that I do a self care routine that allows me to regulate my nervous system daily so that I'm prepared to respond to the day rather than react to people all the time like I was doing prior.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Do you not think that the majority of people are just going through life, just reacting to what's in front of them, and there's no, because we do we think things people think that things are happening to us,
Right.
rather than actually it's actually the other way round. But you've got to do something to change that.
Yeah.
Rather than reacting, and start that flow in the way that you want it. But in general, people are just going about their business, and they're completely unaware that it's possible to change things, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like a lot of people are on autopilot. That's what I call it when they're just reacting to life. They're just on autopilot. And the truth is that it's a lot easier to be a victim to your life and complain about everything and just be in that state of mind rather than taking responsibility, because it does come with some, like, people think that healing is like rainbows and butterflies, and it's not like that at all. It really does make you wake up and realize that maybe you're the common denominator, maybe you're the one that's toxic, and that's not easy to deal with. But it does put responsibility on your shoulders to really stop being a victim of your life. And it's difficult, it's hard, it's not something that you step into and it's like, it's like, yes, I'm so excited that I did this. It's like, okay, we're gonna we're gonna ride this roller coaster of life and realize that sometimes life is really high and sometimes life is really low, but it's not but it's coming from me now. I know that I'm in control. I know that I'm in charge of my life. Whereas before, it's just like, I'm just going to run on autopilot, react to everybody, and then blame everybody for the things that are going wrong with my life. I mean, of course, that's so much easier to just pretend that everything is somebody else's problem.
But you're not going to get the result that you're looking
No,
for. See,
no.
that's the conundrum, isn't it? It's yeah, I think when people hear it initially, they don't like it, for
Mhm.
starters. Like, well, I didn't cause this. No, no. Why? But the massive thing is then it's just so empowering because, yeah, well, you can't change that person. So if you're going to complain about them, that ain't going to change them. That's down to them. So actually, the only person that I can change is me. So maybe I need to get out of my own way and turn things around. But for you, when so how do people? Because, like I say, a lot of people are blissfully unaware. I say blissfully. It's a bit of sarcasm there. But if they're unaware, they're unaware. So then, how do what is going on for people to even come to you? Because they could be in denial.
Right. I feel like a lot of people are in denial, but I feel like one of the most important things that I do is speak out and share my story, especially about the sexual abuse. More people, I've realized with women, when I help them with that, it's been women of sexual abuse. They've suffered from sexual abuse and they've come to me and told me, I didn't want to tell anybody about what happened to me. I thought I could just move past it. I thought I could ignore it. But you're speaking up about it. So it makes me feel like I can come to you and tell you about it because you know what it's like to go through these things. So I think most people are aware. Now, there are going to be instances where, for me, where it was completely blacked out, right? Like I just didn't have any idea until it started to come in. But there are most people that are aware that it happened, but they've stuffed it down so much that it's like no getting, you can't get to it, right? You can't touch it until someone's like, well, this is what happened to me. This is what I had to deal with. And then this is how I healed it. And people they gravitate to that. It's like a magnet. And so they gravitate to that and they start to realize, what happened to me wasn't normal. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, especially in like physical abuse or mental abuse. If you have like a narcissistic parent or anything like that, you start to realize that your home really wasn't as normal as it was. And I think a lot of it has to do with sharing my story and opening up about that rather than keeping it silent and allowing that shame to fester.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's so there could be, well, there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of women out there that are thinking that it was just them. It
Right.
only happened to them, and that their, I don't know, guilt, shame, all the negative emotions that
Mhm.
come with that, and that's stopping them from speaking out or reaching out. And in what ways have you seen it sort of manifest in people's lives when they haven't dealt with it or they haven't healed their trauma?
Wow. A lot of it, and especially, and I'll mention this first, a lot of it, because I did struggle with it, is struggling with my weight. Women that struggle with weight, there's usually like a safety mechanism, right? We put on weight so that it serves us, it protects us, it keeps us safe. And that's something that I've struggled with a lot. Another way is being afraid, like, especially if we're going to talk about business, you're afraid to sell, you're afraid to speak up, you're afraid to be seen, you're afraid to share your story, which is huge because, especially if you're trying to build an online empire, your whole basis is about being able to be seen and heard. And if you don't feel safe being seen and heard, you are not going to show up the way that you need to show up so that people can find you. And so that safety part is going to be huge. And that impacts your revenue, that impacts your income. It also impacts the way that if you have children, the way that you relate to your children, especially if our children are by far the most triggering things for their mothers and their parents. And it's just because they're reflecting back to you, what it is that you need to heal or what it is that you need to heal from your childhood. And so that's really triggering and hard to deal with. But when you heal that trauma, you relate to your children differently. You're also present in those moments so that you're just not off thinking in autopilot, which a lot of us do because we're unhealed. We're not present in our bodies at all. But you also come into alignment, which is all about feeling good in your body. A lot of people don't want anything to do with their body. They have a very love-hate relationship with their body, and that comes from trauma, especially sexual trauma. And so all of those things play out in a daily basis, but they also have residual effects on how we feel about ourselves and how we see ourselves. And that plays a role with our self-esteem, our self-worth, and how confident we feel. And then that shows up also in our business, which is huge. And that's why I think healing your trauma is essential to being able to run a business that you love but is also successful.
Right. And so, but for you, like you say, that it wasn't just pushed down, you just didn't remember it.
Right. Right.
Right. So, I mean, that's not going to happen for everybody,
Correct.
but so where do they go? How do they start the process?
I think journaling is the best way to start the process. That's what I did. That's what I tell my clients. And that's what I tell people that ask me that same question. Just start journaling, and don't start journaling to where you're going to start digging at your past. Just start journaling about your day and only do it for about 5 minutes a day and then leave it alone. And then eventually you'll get consistent and it will become natural for you, that then you can start digging at things like, why did I react to that? Why did I have that argument? Why did I say those things? Why did I feel this way? And so then you can start to unravel and dig at those pieces. And eventually you start to realize that your triggers and your reactions and your emotions during arguments or situations never really have anything to do with the present moment, and it all comes from your past. And so once you get really comfortable at journaling, then it gets easier to start digging at that, because journaling, I feel like, is one of the safest places to express yourself. Because when we express ourselves to other people, there's all this fear of rejection and fear of judgment, and we don't have to worry about that when we're journaling. You can say whatever you want, even the things you know people don't want you to say or frowned upon, or whatever the case may be. You can release all of that there in your journal. And then that allows you to kind of open up and really start to dig at your past.
Right. And when you're talking about, so we're dealing with trauma and healing, it's quite often linked with self-sabotage. So what is the link? What is the link?
The link to self sabotage and trauma all comes down to safety. I know there are a lot of people out there that talk about it's your self worth, which is connected to sabotage, absolutely. But it is really about safety. And it's about safety because when you deal with trauma and even unhealthy childhood conditioning, like hearing you're a bad girl, or you're not good at that, or you're not good at math, or whatever the case may be that we hear when we're children, what happens is you break off from that consciousness. So let's say this is your consciousness, and so let's say that you did something bad that your parents didn't want you to do. They freak out multiple times, and then you break off of that consciousness, and now that part of you is here. And then it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Now you have all these parts of you that are running your programming, but you don't realize that are actually running your programming. And they're doing things to create false safety, right? Like keeping people's at an arm's distance, not showing up when you need to show up, being afraid to go live, or stepping out of your comfort zone, right? Like those things that start to show up. And it's because these parts are actually running the show. And what happens is that when you start to create safety, when you start to really focus on that, these parts become integrated. They come back to their core, they come back to you. And that's when you're like, okay, I can do this. I don't have to sabotage. I don't have to, I don't have to try to keep myself safe, even though I know this isn't really safe. All of you essentially gets on board with what it is that you desire, who you're trying to be, and what it is that you want from life. So the connection is really safety. And that's why I stress it more than anything else. I know people are huge on mindset, and I love mindset. I think it's important. But I think that if you don't feel safe, fixing your mindset or shifting your mindset is way more of a battle than if you focus on feeling safe first.
Right. Yeah, do it. So it's having the right foundation, so that then the mindset on top is that you're gonna have long lasting effects. I mean, it's just, I mean, I suppose, I'm in the arena, so I'm talking to people like yourselves all the time, because it's coming up all the time. But it's just amazing that so much can affect us from our childhood. And it is about getting it out there, because I feel that when we think about, oh, you need to heal from trauma from being a child, you're thinking the worst, like, obviously you've been through the worst. But also there will be people out there that, just because they were spoken to badly when they were 4, is still going to have the same effect. It's not the thing, is it? It's not it doesn't matter what it was, it's how it made you feel at that time. Moving forwards can have an effect on what it is you're doing as a grown adult. I mean, and you're right, it is safety, isn't it? Or, I mean, that is the reason why that is happening, is because, yeah, years ago it was a safety issue. So these things were put into place, but there's no saber-toothed tiger running after you anymore. It's just the stresses that all, we're putting on ourselves that are
Right.
causing all of this. But it's just so amazing that this mechanism is in place to supposedly keep us safe,
Mhm.
and quite obviously it's not doing a very good job, is it? Because actually what we want is out there and it's stopping us getting there.
Right.
It's just, yeah, it is, it's madness. But do you think things are, so you, I mean, obviously you've been doing this a long time. Well, you had been on your healing journey and then gone into this for the last 10 years. But have you seen a change in the last 10 years? As in, I think, are more people sort of open to it and realizing that this is what is going on? Or, and especially in the last 3 years, do
Yeah.
you think things have changed, and in what way?
I do feel like things have shifted a lot, and I'm so grateful that we talk way more around mental health. I'm so happy about that because, I did work in corporate and I did sink into like a depression and anxiety, and I was totally functioning. No one had any idea. And you can't tell the people that you work with, or the notion is you can't tell people you're going through something, right? And so when that happens, you get afraid to tell people. And luckily, in the last few years, especially, we've started to open up about mental health and how it impacts us and how it affects our jobs. We have seen that. The Me Too movement was huge for sexual abuse survivors. However, I feel like it has put us in a situation where it's not taken seriously because the Me Too movement took on a life of its own and turned into something that I don't think anybody wanted it to turn into. It was unfortunate that it turned into, I felt like it was more of, and I don't want to say that, say what I'm going to say, because that wasn't the purpose of it, right? The purpose of it was to spread the word, but I think it became a joke. It was just like a mainstream joke. And that's not what I want to happen. That's not what I want to see. And especially with mental health now, it's become like a buzzword. People are talking about it because
Mm.
it's popular. People are talking about it because it's, the newest flavor of the month. And as much as I love that we're talking about it and we're being more open about it, it's something that we need to be very aware of how we're speaking about it and how we're going about it, so that it has lasting effects, so that it's not just a flavor of the month. So it's not just something that, because it's popular right now, we're going to go ahead and have a conversation about it. We're going to talk about it. It
Mm.
needs to be something that we talk about every single day. Every single day, it's got to be something that we realize that mental health impacts people, trauma impacts people, whether or not we're feeling good impacts people. We have to very much see ourselves holistically, and not just mental health and not just sexual trauma and things like that, right? Because we're not, the thing is, I know that, and I love that we're talking about mental health, but we're not just mental health, like that. We don't just have a mind, we have a body, we have a spirit, we have emotions. Like we have to talk about all of this as a whole person. We cannot just talk about mental health because it's the flavor of the month, right? And I know that that gets tricky, but I want to say that because I feel like it's important that we're talking about this all the time, not just because it's popular to talk about right in the last, probably the last year or so, especially when we did, everybody shut down for the pandemic. It's not like it was just one country or one place. And we started to realize how important human connection is. We started to realize how important our daily routines and how much we actually take for granted as people. And so I feel like that really did impact our mental health. And I feel like that's why it's become a bigger conversation. But I also want everybody to be aware that, this isn't something that we can just let die off in the next year when the next flavor comes in.
Absolutely. And the thing is with that is, I agree with you there about there's so much now on the mental health. But yeah, it's not just that though, is it? And you know, because of what's happened over the last few years, because people's mental health has suffered, I think even though it might not look like it even at the moment, and I know still people are suffering, blah, blah, but they are now a little bit more aware. Like you
Mhm.
just said there, that we have taken too many things for granted, and we have realized that yes, we do need human connection, we do need community. And so I do feel, well, I hope, I don't know whether that's wishful thinking, but I do hope further down the road it is going to, I do feel like there is a shift. And I suppose even, this show came up out of it, because it was, yeah, you're not, I think you're right. People have got the connection between the mental and the physical, but hey, hello, the spiritual, the real, what we are, we're spiritual beings just living in a physical body.
Yes.
So it's not just the mental and the physical, is it? It is the spiritual. And yeah, your emotions are more important than what we, and I do think we thought it was all about our thoughts. And I'll put my hand up there too. We thought that it was all about your thoughts. You're not your thoughts. It's
Right.
actually more important about how you feel
Right.
and being connected with your own spirit. But so I do feel like there is a shift. And you're right. These things come out from a good place initially, and then it goes sort of so far that way, it then is not looked at in the right way, or people are, they're jumping on the bandwagon, or they're
Yeah.
this, they're that, and it's it's ruining the work. So it's,
Yes.
I suppose, like everything, we've got to find that middle ground again,
Right.
because it seems to have gone too far.
Right.
But yeah, and then people aren't going to take it seriously, because then they stop believing, and then that's belittling anybody that's suffered at any time, and that seems to be the danger. Do you think that's
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yes, I do. I think you've actually hit it right on the head, because people then don't take it seriously. It's like, the book, when you cry wolf, how many times are you going to cry wolf, and then when you really need someone, or you really need help, no one's there for you. Now, I'm not saying anybody in these situations has cried wolf, but I think that it's a very fine line that we cross when we make things mainstream that are really about helping people, because we don't want it to be so normal that people are desensitized to it, right? It's like, and I know
There it
this is
is.
irrelevant, but the violence that we see on TV, we're so desensitized to any type of violence, it just doesn't impact us anymore. We're used to it. We're used to seeing certain things on TV and things like that. So to me, it's the same type of concept. And I don't want anybody to be desensitized to sexual abuse, or to child trafficking, or to domestic violence and things like that, right? Like, that doesn't need to be normal. It needs to be very clear that that's not normal, and we cannot allow it to take a life of its own, to the help that they need, because now people don't believe that they've been through certain things.
Yeah, I agree. That seems to be, that's the worry, isn't it? That is the
Yeah.
danger. I mean, do you think the media? I mean, look, I'm going to admit I don't see stuff on the media, because I don't even own a television, so I don't know what's being. I don't. I got rid of mine 2 years ago because of all the rubbish, so I don't know what is being sort of put out there. Do you think they're helping at the moment, or are they hindering things?
So I don't watch the news, so I don't know. Like, that's off
Yeah,
limits in my
that's
house.
same as that. I can't watch it. I could always obviously choose to open up a
Right.
website, but I don't, and I just can't even have terrestrial telly, because we don't have one. I
You-
can watch shows, I can watch films that I choose to, and I can't even listen by mistake. It's wonderful. I
It
live in a bubble.
it really is. It's so fantastic to live that way, because you really and I mean, I'm not against the news by any way. Like, if there is something that I'm curious about, I will go and look it up and then figure
Yeah,
out
it's your
what's going on
choice.
for myself. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I do feel like mainstream media, and especially in the news, just pumps everybody full of fear. So, and when you're pumped full of fear, what are you going to focus on? Fear. And so it's like, I don't want to say, I mean, they are essentially the problem, but they're in the business of making money through news, right? And so what sells? Fear. Because it's easier to stay stuck on the news and stay stuck scrolling through mainstream social media and things like that, because you're in fear, and fear means that you're not living in your body. That means that you're not present with what's going on, with you're totally disconnected with what you want. And so it's easier because now you're a consumer. Now I can control you. Now I can do all of these things just because you watched 20 minutes of the news and now you're scared to leave your house. So so I
That's
feel like
mad, isn't it?
I feel like making people aware is one thing, but pumping people full of fear is not exactly what we want
It's not
either,
the
right?
answer. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
the
it's
answer, is it?
exactly.
You
And when
know,
you live,
because
so
yeah, go
when
on.
you live when you live in a bubble, it's so much easier. Like, you're like, oh, it's going on. Oh, it's snowing over there. I didn't know that. Oh, they've turned off all the power over there. Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. That's tragic. Oh, that happened over there. That didn't impact my life. I have feelings about it. Of course I do. I don't want anybody to hurt. I don't want anybody to suffer. I'm still a compassionate, empathetic human being, but I choose not to let that control my life, because the truth is that I have so much more important things to focus on than things that are so far out of my control. Worrying about it certainly isn't going to serve me.
And it's not going to help them either. Feeling sympathy for something. I'm not saying I don't, that makes me sound like a cold-hearted bitch. But what I mean is, if I can do something, of course I'm going to
Right.
help.
Right.
If it's something that has got no impact on me and is so far away and I can't do anything about it, me feeling bad for them isn't helping them,
Correct.
is it? And it sounds like you're being cold, but your sympathy isn't helping them. If you're going to go and do something, go and do something.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd rather not know about it, because, like you say, you said earlier about we need to be more conscious because we're running through life on autopilot, and then you're reacting to outside news. All it's doing is actually affecting you. It's like drinking poison and expecting them to die. So just because you're hearing it, you're feeling really bad for them, it's going to affect you and your life. So it's not helping anybody
Right.
other than the news people, the TV or the advertisers, because
Right.
you have to watch the adverts in between. Oh, I haven't watched that. It's lovely. It's wonderful. So, I mean, it is. And you saying that earlier about being conscious, and I get it. Again, we've got amazing bodies, haven't we? Our bodies are amazing. And thank goodness we don't have to remember to breathe, I'd be dead. We'd all be dead because we
You're
wouldn't be
right.
able to remember. Thank goodness this amazing, innate power, whatever you want to call it, is running the show, whether you're awake or not, whilst you're asleep. And yet we don't trust it for other things because we think we know best,
Mhm.
and we're going to think and control. But actually, you said earlier about being present and being in your body. That is where the magic is going to happen. But trust that what has happened in our societies where we've become so detached from our own power that every single person has got within them.
Yeah.
Where did it all go wrong, Angela? Where did it go wrong?
Well, I believe that it came from I think it all came from trauma, right? Because if we have and I don't think anybody purposely passed down generational trauma, right? Because if you think about it, in days where there were saber-toothed tigers that we're running from, we're teaching our next generation how to survive the saber-toothed tiger, how to survive, like the Oregon Trail and things like that. That was all about survival, and now we don't have to live like that, right? We're not going to freeze to death. Most of us are not going to starve to death. Most of us are pretty much safe. And so because the idea of surviving is still very much in our generations, in our bloodline, it just naturally gets passed down. I really do believe a lot of it is naturally passed down. And then within your immediate family, there is trauma like, abuse and being yelled at and unhealthy childhood conditioning. But what takes you out of being present in your body is essentially that trauma. Because when you're a child, they're present in their body all the time. They're not thinking like we do. We want to believe that they're thinking all the time, but they're really not. They're just, everything has face value. Nothing has any real meaning unless we are teaching them to give it meaning. And so what happens is when you're playing as a little kid and you get yelled at or you get hit or there's sexual abuse or something like that, it is your safety mechanism so that you can survive to come out of your body and live in your head. And when you live in your head, that is purely meant to keep you safe, right? That's your survival. That's your survival and instincts and everything kicking in. You don't want to be in your body because that's where it's been unsafe. That's where it's
Ah.
been keeping you from, living, or something might happen, right? So I'm going to live in my mind where I overthink all the time, where logic rules everything. And the truth is that your mind distorts information. Your mind is the one that really keeps you trapped, because now you're overthinking about something that happened 5 years ago and it's completely irrelevant. And you're like, where did that even happen? Like, I wasn't even thinking about that, but where did that come from? And it's because our minds are there to keep us safe. And that's why we have to learn to come back into our bodies, which is purely a practice. It's like everything else in life. When you are healing, it's a practice, because there are days, even though I'm healed, that I'm totally living in my head and I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been in my head all day. I can feel that I've been in my head all day. But it is because we are naturally present in our body, because that's how we survive, right? That's how children tell us they're hungry. That's how children tell us they've got a wet diaper, because they're living in their body. And then something happens, and then now they're living in their head, and now everything has meaning, and everything is no longer face value, and everything, they turn off how connected they are to source and how connected they are to other dimensions and things like that.
And so it's like you say, it takes practice. So I suppose we basically, what I'm hearing from you is really, we've all got ourselves caught in some bad habits
Mhm. Yeah.
that have come from trying to keep me safe, but actually they're not serving us.
Right.
So every single person can do something about that, but it will take practice, because I suppose our bodies are, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? It's like our bodies are actually quite lazy if they're left to their own devices. They
Mhm.
want to be on autopilot because I suppose it's saving the juice. But it's,
Mhm.
again, a bit of a contradiction in itself, because actually that's how you re-energize, is being present in your body. So do you know what I mean? It's like yeah, it's like our mind is playing tricks on us, because it's
Yes.
saying go on autopilot to save energy, but actually you'll get all the energy you ever need if you were to be present in your body.
Correct. Yes.
Is that is that
Yes.
is that it's, I've not never really thought of it like that. It's just sort of come to me like that. It's like, yeah, we're weird creatures, aren't we? We are. We're so we're funny beings. We're
You
very funny beings.
we really are. I actually want to add to that. I run a lot, and people are always like, tell your body to go one more, get your mind to tell your body one more. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's my mind telling my body to please stop. Like, I was like, we're
100%,
not
isn't it?
playing that. Yeah, I'm like, we're not playing that. My body my body knows what it's doing, right? We've all essentially have been running for thousands of years. There isn't any reason why my body isn't going to take another step where my mind
Yeah.
is like, please stop, right? Because your mind is like, your knee hurts, you can't breathe, and you're like, I wouldn't know any of these things if my brain would just be quiet.
You're right. It is. So the problem, so isn't that funny? Because so it's actually the mind is the issue. Our
Yeah.
minds are the blooming problem. What's been going on, and it's fake. It's not giving us the truth, and it's keeping us stuck.
Mhm.
But there's a way around it. So to the listeners, if they're like, oh, I'd like to get in touch with Angela, what is it you offer? Who do you offer it to? And how can people come and work with you?
Sure. So I work with soul aligned service providers and trauma coaches. I do courses. I have a free group. I run challenges like every 8 weeks. And most of my work is one to one because, we do touch on very sensitive things that, we don't necessarily want to share with the whole world and a group of people. So most of my work is done one to one, and I can be reached at Transform with Angela. It's like that's across Instagram, LinkedIn. I think it's that way on Facebook, and that's how I can be reached. You can send me a message, you can get involved with the challenges that I do if you want to see how I work. I do want to say the challenges are a bit intense, but anybody that joins the challenges, they see massive results. And then of course my one-to-one and my courses are not as intense, but it will help you start on your journey, especially if you have just decided that you've wanted to start healing or unlearning your unhealthy childhood conditioning, or starting to stop self-sabotage. The courses are definitely the best way to go, but I can be reached at Transform with Angela.
Awesome. And so when you're with the healing process, I mean, how long is it going to take? Is it how long's a piece of string, or do they work with you monthly? Is it a 12-week program? How do you work, and what's the end game? How will they even know that, okay, that is all dealt with, or is it an ongoing journey?
I want to be very clear. Healing is an ongoing journey. It's not a destination. Would I love to tell you that you're going to be 100% healed and incredibly present all the time, and you're going to have no bad days ever again after my program at 12 weeks? Well, I would love to be able to tell people that, but that's just not true. And I don't live or market that way. Healing is an ongoing journey. However,
But isn't it the same thing with anything? I mean, it makes me laugh. People even like, oh no, they're going to lose. Oh, you're going to change your body in 12 weeks. Yeah, you can. And then there's even a contradiction there, because people go, oh, that didn't work because you've regained it. Well, no, it did work. It quite clearly worked. But like you say, why would anything be finished?
right.
Because if you go back to your old habits, and whether that's weight loss, whether that's new habits for your business, whether it's whatever, because of this programming, why anybody would think that, okay, that's it, 12-week program, I'm solved. It's crazy, really, whether it's to do with fitness or anything, because if you go back to your default, your bad habit from that part, of course you're going to regain weight. Of course you're going to, not do so well in business because you're not doing the things that you should be doing every day. Everything takes practice. Do you feel that that's what people are? It's almost like They just want to do that to that and then finish. Everything's going to be an ongoing journey. That's what life is, isn't it? A
Right.
wonderful journey.
Yes. Yes. I feel like people want the magic bullet so
Yeah,
bad. And the
so bad.
truth and the truth is that realizing that it's a journey is the magic bullet.
Yes, there you go. Love that. That's it. I'm going to use that. That is it in a nutshell. That's the magic. Yeah, I've got a magic pill.
You want to know what it is?
You want to know what it is? The magic pill is that it's a journey. It's an ongoing journey, just like life. I mean, it is funny. We are funny creatures that we want everything now.
Mhm.
We want it all done now, and we want it. That's it. Stop. And it's well, yeah. I haven't met anybody yet. That's
Well, in their defense, it would just be so much easier if there was some magic bullet that someone was getting rich off of, and
it would
everybody
be.
bought it, and we'd
I
all
mean,
be
I'd buy it if there was one. I'm not going to lie. If there was a quick fix, if there was, really, okay, I'll try that. But come
why
on,
not?
man. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't. Yeah, I just know that they don't exist. If somebody wants to prove me wrong,
That'd be
come
great.
get me. Yeah, that'll be great. I'll take 2.
Yeah. I'll help you sell them.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny, and I know. I suppose we're impatient creatures as well. We want everything now. Everything is instant gratification these days anyway. So why not? We don't want to keep working on things. But look, I'm the same. I just like anybody. I can get complacent with things, and then I have to have a little word with myself. It's like
Yeah.
get back to your routine. It's why it's so very quickly before we end. How do you do? What's your morning ritual? Do you have a morning ritual that you do before you get out of bed every day?
Yes. I don't look at my phone. I don't look at emails. I get up and I'll tell this part of it is kind of weird, but I'm going to share it anyway. I put, oh gosh, pink salt, Himalayan pink salt. I put some of that in a shot glass and take it and then fill it up with water and take that. And then apple cider vinegar, I take a shot of that with water in it. And then I drink lemon water. And then I come into my office and I journal and I drink coffee. I'm not like I drink coffee. But I journal for
No.
about right. I journal for about, it depends on what's going on, for maybe 1 to 2 hours. But in that journaling, it's
Wow.
it's about like what happened during the day, any like limiting beliefs. If I'm focused on something, like something that I notice, something that I'm aware of, I just talk about it. Then I do a gratitude list, and then I go into prayer, and then I write down all of my goals and I rampage, which is something I learned from Hicks. And
Ooh.
it's just like affirmations, pretty much like, I'm a badass, I'm good with money, I'm fierce, I'm unstoppable, I'm healed, just things. It's just about a half a page of that. And I feel like that works better than standing in front of the mirror and saying affirmations that I don't really believe, because
Believe.
now I'm in this state of flow after journaling and gratitude and prayer, and then I come into like the goals and then rampage. So I'm in a state of flow. I believe it more than if I'm just standing in front of the mirror and trying to
And
say
you're
these
feeling good.
affirmations. Yes.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah.
feeling good. And
Yes.
that's the thing, isn't it? I think, I do feel that it's the misinterpretation of affirmations or anything like that, is people are misinterpreting the whole law of attraction thing. Oh, I've just got to think, well, no, not if you just do it once, because you've just had 60, 70,000 or whatever. Some people will say millions. I don't know what the number is. I've heard different things, but however many thoughts you have in a day, and if you're only going to think about your goals once, then all the best.
Yeah. Isn't
Good
that the
luck with
truth?
that one. It's just And I love, I do feel that a morning ritual is just so but it does. It's going to have a change on how you feel. And
Mhm.
who doesn't want to feel good? Come on, everybody wants to feel good at their core. And it's
Right.
just sort of making people realize that they can, and you have the power to feel however you want to feel every single day.
Yes.
But it takes practice.
Mhm.
It takes practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, truly glad that you've dealt with a lot of the stuff. You've had a lot to deal with, and yeah, okay, it's not a never-ending journey, but it's lovely to hear what you're doing now and helping other women to deal with it too, because it just goes to show that there really is light. It don't have to be living in fear. You don't have to be living in a place where you are stuck and self-sabotaging, and that there is hope out there. So thank you so much for your time today. It's important to have these conversations, to bring it up, and so that other people out there are not feeling alone, and then that hopefully they will reach out. So thank you for
Yes.
being here, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Awesome. So everybody else, I will be back on Tuesday. Tomorrow. Oh God, get confused. I'll be back tomorrow with a coffee with Karen. So bye for now.
Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.